Oh, it's live.
All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, Shamus. Thank you for joining us for part two of Brandstorm, following on from our most recent presentation from you, where we talked about considering neurodivergent users in your website and your customer journey. So let's dig in. We did get our attendees to email through their questions because, like always, we just have the best discussion and we always go over time. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We did have some really thoughtful questions come through after our last live with Shamus, so we thought we'd just jump back on and unpack a few of them properly. Please forgive my noisy bird in the background. Dudley Sandy heard. That is Miss Flowers, who originally was called Mr. Flowers until she made it. So, anyway, we're all different here, and it's totally fine and wonderful. So my name is Carolina Jimenez. I'm the founder of Carpia and Neuro Awesome, and my lovely, handsome co-pilot here is Shamus Hart, the heart of Carpia and Neuro Awesome. And I love giving him that intro because it always makes him giggle. So thank you, Shamus, for joining us again. Happy Thursday. I thought it was Friday, but it's only Thursday.
Same.
So what we touched on last time clearly struck a nerve. I had people reach out to me on TikTok, on Insta, on LinkedIn, and especially the idea that businesses could be unintentionally losing customers, not on their product, not because it's bad, but because the experience around it is actually harder, louder, and more confusing or less accommodating than they realize. So, Seamus, what can you tell us?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these things aren't massive and they're not expensive overhauls. They're often small adjustments to the environment to make your business easier to basically access. So we're not talking about massive things. They're usually really small and really easy to implement to basically get that nice connection of loyal customers to things that really resonate with them.
So how the first question that I'm going to ask from one of our participants was, how do I know if my conversion problem is actually a UX problem and not a marketing problem? So this is such a good question because a lot of businesses automatically assume I need more traffic, I need more reach, I need more ads, but sometimes the problem isn't more people; it's what happens when the people get there.
Yeah, exactly. And if people are arriving but not converting, you've really got to look at the friction points. You've got to look, especially with neurodivergent people, if the environment is overwhelming, if the message is unclear. So a really good example of it is with active versus passive voice. Active voice is a lot easier to understand, lowers the Fleisch-Kincaid test really easily. Is the navigation, is that at all confusing? Are the instructions written in a way that assumes everyone processes in exactly the same way? So are you getting that confusion? Are you looking at the nuance if it actually resonates with the people who you're trying to target? Because if it's not happening, it absolutely pushes away people without you even realizing it. And these are really small things around language and environment and really how your instructions work.
Yeah. So essentially, what we're saying is more visibility isn't going to fix a leaky journey.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And more traffic in a poor experience, all it does is amplify the problems that you have, which means that more people in a broken system means a bigger loss of opportunity. So you're actually pushing more customers away than actually gaining them. And they're really small things you can do to fix it.
Yeah. So the next question that we got was, I run a retail store. What are the first few low-cost changes that I could make that would genuinely improve my customer journey and experience?
Ooh.
I love this one actually because it makes it practical, so not theoretical. Like not one day when we have budget, but what can someone actually do right now?
Yeah, and I think it's a good one. And I always start with the basics. I mean, look at the lighting. That's an easy one. $5 LED tube from Philips can fix up a lot of problems. So one of those nice daylight tubes. Look at the scent profile in your store. So what are you pumping through the air conditioner? Is it something that's attracting or repelling? Look at the music. Is it too loud? What type of music are you using? Look at how easy it is to navigate through the spaces. And the interesting thing is I used to work with someone who used to do this a lot, and it's looking at that customer maze. Those little environmental differences can basically it can be the difference between staying longer and being really comfortable in the environment and converting to a sale, or making them leave really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the number one thing here is the dwell time, which affects the spend.
Yeah, exactly. And you can put it down to toning down harsh lights or some of the fragrances that are being pumped through the store. Huge difference. It sounds really small, but it's how safe and comfortable people are in the space. And this comes from cognitive science. So if you think of from a smell and a light point of view, that a lot of these are direct sensory inputs to the brain. So if someone's very sensitive around that, that actually might be pushing them away, not attracting them. And it's something that you can actually fix today.
Yeah, I remember I was going to look at an apartment one time, and the cleaner had just been through, and the smell of the cleaner that they had used, and the smell from the like the recycling and bin chute was just so gross. I was just like, nah. So I mean, I was just visiting there, but there were like shops and restaurants down underneath that apartment block. So I could only imagine how much sensory unawareness they had down there as to some of these extra things, because I suppose they're in there cooking and they're inside, but they probably don't spend that much time outside to kind of go, well, if people are walking past in the footpath, or if they're kind of coming around our front door, like, is this another thing that is potentially creating a barrier? So,
You're right.
yeah, so you mentioned businesses could be missing out on about 20% of customers. What does this actually look like in real life? So this was one of the biggest talking points from the live.
Oh, yeah, this is a really good one. So a lot of the times what it looks like is people walking in and out of a business. So it's looking at the return cycle. It's also opening a site and abandoning it really quickly. So from a digital framework point of view, people walking into the physical environment and feeling tired, confused, overloaded, unsure, and really unsure on how to actually tell you why, because you're talking about that these environmental factors are mainly processed by the subconscious brain. So it's going in, you don't know why, and you're walking out. So if you look at 1 in 7, or potentially more depending on the studies, are neurodivergent, it means that if you've designed for one style of processing, or you're designing and not looking at those kind of end states on a distribution curve, you're leaving money at the table, not because the offering is bad or wrong. It's because you've excluded a bunch of people, and you've also excluded them in such a way where catering for them also caters for the general population. Think of it like a canary in a coal mine. The gas, or if there's any problem with carbon dioxide, it affects humans slower than it does to something that's a lot more sensitive, like a canary. And that's why they would take them down there, because they were the first indication if there was something wrong in the environment. And it's the same thing with your customers. If they're walking away and it's an environmental thing that's really easy, it's also having an impact on the 80% that you're working on, that you're still profiting from or working with. So it's not a small thing when you're looking at like the outliers. They're just indication of a far bigger challenge or value to your business.
So yeah, the loss is not always visible, at least not immediately, until sort of later down the track where you're sort of going, oh shit, like, our business dropped by X amount. And then you're just kind of left to kind of sieve through all the different potential possibilities of what could have happened.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of the times the leakage isn't really visible, and it's not usually something that you can see it's a problem until it's a problem. So, the big companies spend a lot of money on the environments and making them profitable. Everything from lights to scent to color paint. Look at some of the medical studies of why emergency rooms are in the colors that they are. And it's purely environmental to lower down the panic levels. So if you're looking at those pastels, the pinks, there's a reason they're doing it. It's a very extreme value, but those subtle things are things that you may not look at, the leakage that could have a massive difference to the underlying health of a business.
Yeah. And another example that sort of is triggered with that is, like, for me, someone who loves swimwear, so you can tell the difference in the experience of swimwear, where you might be swimming for a long period of time, and a cheaper swimmer that hasn't put as much time and planning into their swimmer may not cover the seams, for example. And so therefore, wherever the seam rubs on pressure points, you're going to get blisters, you're going to get chafing, you're going to get like red marks or what have you. But it's not like when you pay just that little bit extra, you'll see that they've put a nice sort of covering on it. They've moved where the seam is ever so slightly, just to accommodate for the actual experience of someone who's going to be in this for a long time. So you see that more like if someone's like if you're looking for like a marathon swimming type swimmer, like triathlon.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and it's really understanding that journey. So understanding the details that matter, and there's a lot of small things that you may overlook that's incredibly important to a customer that you may not address, and that's why you do need that research piece, and you do need to understand why they're there and really why would they want to be there. Those behavioral drivers, exactly what you've said. It's the articulation of detail.
So another question we've got now, so how do I make my business more neuro-inclusive without making it feel clinical or like I'm singling people out? I feel like this one's really important because we know people want to do better, but they don't necessarily want to go out and get it wrong or make customers feel like they're labeled or kind of highlighted in terms of what differences they might have. Sorry.
Mm. Yeah, you're right about that. And the good news about it is that it's not necessarily about getting customers to disclose anything or even staff members to disclose anything. I mean, part of it is looking at a psychosocial problem, so a psychosocial risk within the business. And it's like any risk, how do you address it? And it's by looking at what the problem is and then having some adjustments. And really the best adjustments are good design. So we're talking about environmental design. We're also talking about space design. So think of quieter periods of time where you can advertise to certain groups. Think of clearer signage, simpler instructions, softer sensory load, so around the lighting, the smell, the textiles that you use in there. Easier navigation from a website point of view, so making it a lot easier and reducing those barriers to get where you want, and making things a lot more predictable when you come back. So having those systems up and ready, and the understanding that service design piece, I mean, that helps neurodivergent people immensely, but it also helps everyone else because it makes your brand a lot more understandable to the broader customers. So anything that's going to help the neurodivergent will benefit everyone because it's lowering the barrier for not just one person, but a group of people. So you have that flow on efficiency.
Yeah. Plus, most of us have got neurodivergent traits anyhow, so it's it's just making your experience a lot more considerate, for a more pleasurable experience, and less overwhelming one as well. Like even I think when you go into cafes and you see someone standing there, but they're like, oh no, you have to order over there, and then you have to sit down, or like I remember going to Chatswood, for the first time, besides getting completely lost in the wrong car park, because I parked in the Mandarin Centre and not the West Hills.
Oh god, it's a nightmare there.
I mean, that's another user experience that we could spend hours diving into. But I went to the coffee culture there, and it says please wait to be seated. No one came over to me. Then I went up to the counter to order my coffee, and they said, "Oh, it's table service," and they had so much attitude. I was like, "Oh, fucking okay then." Like they could have taken my order right then and there, but they're like, "No, go sit down. We're gonna come and take your order." So then I go and sit down. I'm waiting. I'm like, looking around, waiting for them to come over and take my order, and then they take my order, and I got my food, and it was so crap, and the whole experience was just so terrible. Um, and especially when you pay more, people are even more expectant of a positive and smooth experience.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And it's like a really good example that you said with the car park and being a maze. Most car parks use colors, which for the percentage of people, that's great. Oh, I'm sitting in blue, whatever. Also, you've got two barriers. You've also got the color, where you do have people with color blindness. You
Yeah,
also have the other point of view where you've got people where dyslexia, dyspraxia, you also might have linguistic difference. So Blue B4 may not be comprehensible to an audience. So one of the things that I have seen is that they're also not only just doing colors, but they're also doing shapes.
yeah. Oh, that's really
So what it means that they can still identify where it is. It's like I'm in the triangle level, or I'm in the square level, or I'm in the round level. Really, really small things. So you can still have those different things, and you're actually catering for the linguistic barriers, which is actually really significant. And the best example of it, have a look at airport car parks. They're the ones where they've got a lot of traffic of people, different cultures, different backgrounds, and they may not understand what B4 looks like. They could also come from a culture where there's a propensity for types of colorblindness. So the colors that you're using may not actually resonate, but it's just a really small thing to do. Like just add one little symbol to it, and you've made it a lot more accessible for people, and it's not that much effort.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually about that, because like I always have to take photos.
Oh, same here.
But like, yeah, that whole car park kerfuffle was honestly so stressful. Like it was my first time going to Chatswood. And there's Chatswood Chase, and then the Mandarin Centre right next door. And you know, you call someone, oh, I'm here in Chatswood, Chatswood Shopping Centre. Are you in the Chase, or are you in like, you know? And then again, to your point about signs and symbols and stuff like that. So the way I ended up finding my car after walking around all the levels, because of being I forgot, you know, yellow H3 or whatever it was at the time. I walked around and I had my bloody clicker. I was like waiting, watching for like the flashing thing. Walked around all levels, couldn't find it. And I had the security guard. And then in the end, the way I found my car was like, I described to the guy the inside of the lift. And yeah, and he's like, oh, you parked in the Mandarin.
Oh, that's so good.
Oh my God, that was honestly, and I was so tired. It was the end of like working, like my first day moving to Sydney, working in that shopping centre. Oh my God, like worst ever. So can only imagine how many other people have had.
They would lose so many. I've been into tons of them. Like, yeah, it's like I always lose that sort of stuff, but it's like design challenge, and it's like really simple, and that's the things don't have to be complicated. I think that's probably the thing, and you're exactly right. Like, they're not complex design things. They're not expensive. They're usually, you know, turn the music down, or it might be turn the music up. It may be change a light bulb, and those are not expensive things, and that you can, like, you know, turning down the music or changing the music. It's something that you can do literally now.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess a lot of people underestimate just these types of changes. They probably see it as soft. And it's not all about behavioural, like, as we know.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a lot of it's not necessarily about behavioural. It's like, when you look at it, is probably the big one. So the one that I don't think people think of is smell. Is one of those things that is a direct sensory engagement. So it directly goes into the brain, and it affects memory. Just think of the time when you smelt something, you'll go back to childhood and smelling it. Like with me, it's those lolly bananas. Yeah, it just reminds me of the Easter show. But the point is that these things affect memory, and they affect memory in a way where it's really deep, and it's really subconscious, and you can overload emotions really well. And there's some great psychological experiments that are not very ethical by any means, from the 60s and 70s, where they've tried all this, and it's actually really crazy what they've managed to get people to do. It's why I always find it interesting is that for Anzac Day, one of the core things that they use is rosemary for remembrance. And I always wonder, and it was something that came up in a lecture years ago, is I wonder what that actually has an effect on the the vets who fought in World War One, and that's all they could smell. So they've had a lot of trauma and flashbulb memories, and they're smelling, rosemary. It would take them back exactly to that point in time. So it's
Very enhanced memory as well.
It does, yeah, it does. And it's a lot of the time it just, because the way that the smell is, it's like it's a direct nerve to the brain. It bypasses a lot of other processing. So a lot of them have, like when you're looking at vision or sound, there's like intermediary things that happen. With smell, it's very different. It's directly goes into the brain, so you can trigger some really, really deep things. And it's why the best example I can think of is the Abercrombie and Fitch shop. They would pump their perfume through there, and the studies that they've done on it is crazy. They knew exactly how much, what the smells were, what the kind of new car versus the fun smell and all that, to really trigger buying behavior. People think the scent stuff is just a little bit of voodoo, and it's not. It drives behavior in a very specific way. And I mean, you can even think about it. Starbucks, great example. Part of the reason they've got the big comfy chairs and you open the door and you smell the coffee is you want to sit down and you want to dwell. And if you're reading a book or doing some work, it's going to upsell you. So instead of having one coffee, you're probably going to have two coffees and a pastry. You've just suddenly increased your value just from that coffee smell. Yeah, it's really crazy. Or the cinema. And come on, everyone does the same thing. I'm not going to buy popcorn. You walk through the lobby, you smell the popcorn, and you're buying one of the big garbage guts meals.
Yeah. Another, and this is going a little bit off topic, but another example, and this one is not actually smell, but what they do in Vegas, I've heard, is they pump more oxygen into the air to
Yes.
keep people more alert, awake, gambling longer, and engaged.
Exactly. And it's when you think about it, it's really environmental. It's using environmental psychology, and it's the same reason why they pump high quality air through the casino. The other thing that they do is they make sure that there's no natural light. So it screws your circadian rhythms and your chronotypes, so you don't know how long you've been there for. It's really effective.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the bottom line is it's not just aesthetics. There's commercial psychology that goes into all of these behavioural changes and triggers, and some, like, obviously we can't expect a smaller business or a smaller brand pumping extra oxygen into their shops or what have you. But there are other things that you can do that are very small. But I mean, the way that we can make changes by first understanding what some of the potential barriers are, and then navigating from there as to what we can do to be better, do better, and have better results.
No, you're 100% right. And it's really, when you think about it, a lot of the times it's really around designing behavior and what sort of action that you want. And it's removing a lot of the chaos and those kind of hard to navigate things. And it may be something as simple as smell may be that deterrent. And it's like a very, very good example of it is perfumeries spend a crazy amount of money to get in the right place in certain shops, because it's like there's certain smell profiles that people align to certain behaviors or certain age groups. So if you're looking for a younger audience, you're like, part of it is Chanel number 5 has a very distinct smell. People know about it. Now it's got the affluent aspect to it. It's also has the kind of more mature aspect to it. But if you're going for a younger audience and your shop, and let's say one of your cashiers is you know, using Chanel number 5, it actually may be deterring some of the sales. And I have heard of this happening before. It was one of the rules why at Starbucks is that you weren't allowed to wear any perfume or aftershave when you actually worked on shift, because they did not want it affecting the smell of the coffee. And they did not want, because it absorbs it, and B, it does get in the way of actually driving behavior if you've got a trigger smell and you're like, oh, okay, I just don't want to be here long, or no, this smells a little bit too old for me, so I'm not going to do, or actually, no, this smells really premium. So yeah, it's something that, as small as smell is, it may be driving a lot of behavior, and especially in those boutiques, especially in those fashion boutiques, it's actually really crazy.
I can totally relate to that. I remember being, but I think with the hairdresser, and the girl that was going to do my hair was actually had this really cheap, nasty like deodorant on, and it was just really masking with VO. And then I just like, I'm not gonna sit here for like 2 hours and have someone like wash and blow dry my hair when they like reek of VO. So I know that sounds like really judgy, but
No, it makes sense, because yeah, it really makes sense. And think of it from a return of value point of view. They're in a beauty industry, and if they're not maintaining the same standards, and it's got nothing to do with BO or not, it has to do with the perception management, because your perception is that they're not giving the same standards to themselves as the customer. So from a behavioral psychology point of view, it's very simple. It's like, oh, you're not looking after yourself. Why should I trust in your brand? It's why scent and that environmental factor drives behavior like you wouldn't believe.
and it's a snap decision. You don't even realize that you're making these connections in your brain with that brand, with that person, with that, and and then the next time, I was walking past that salon, I know for sure I was like, I'm never going back there again. So
No, exactly. Like, you're 100% right with it. And it's like, you don't know what. So the interesting thing is, you don't know why you form that position. And the thing is that direct sensory is driven your behavior, because it's a deep subconscious thing. You haven't quite, all you're thinking is, it's smelly and I don't want to go back. You haven't actually connected the higher consciousness of why you don't want to go back. And with a lot of businesses, they're not looking in lighting and smell. And this came from an amazing environmental designer who I worked with, absolute gun, and he was always talking about sense of arrival. And it's smell and lights, and also to a certain extent sound. It like raises the expectations.
also warmth. So I do recall like when I've gone into different like shopping centers and stuff, as we're coming into summer, even if it's still, cold, they pump up the air conditioning and they start putting out the summer clothes and all of their swimwear and all that kind of stuff early. But you do feel that sort of elevated heating very prominently when they start putting out the summer stuff early. And I suppose the same can be said for winter, like
Exactly. No, exactly. And temperature is another huge thing. So like in premium stores, they usually set the temperature between about 17 and 20 degrees. And the reason is to keep it empty. And I feel sorry for the staff. They always look freezing. I feel like taking a hot coffee in, but there's reasons for it, because they're trying to drive people who go in and go out, dump their money. It also frees up the staff.
Yeah.
So a person's coming in there to business, they go out. Likewise, there's another good one. If you've ever been to New York, there's the Ralph Lauren store. Now there's a cafe right up the top. I went in there in the middle of winter, and it's like they've pumped through the hot chocolate smell, and it was really, really warm. And I spent a shitload of money there because that hijacked my brain. Don't know why, but it was toasty and warm in there. It was great. Oh, and they've got like hot chocolates and all this other stuff. I'll go there. Then I had that, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling really good. Oh, now I'm going to browse through there. It's like it's real. I'm really comfortable. So
sorry to interrupt.
and it's like those temperature things. You're 100% right. They do drive behavior, and you've got to work out what type of behavior you're trying to drive with it.
Yeah. I was going to say the other thing about chocolate is, doesn't the chocolate, because obviously smell and taste are related as well, and there's that element of like when I have chocolate, it's releasing those the love hormone, or
yeah, you're getting a big dopamine
yeah,
hit.
yeah. Okay, so let's move on because you and I love having a chat, and we.
Oh no, absolutely, but there's so much on there.
I know. I'm sorry. So the next question that came in was, you spoke about chronotypes and work from home. So how should business owners think about that if they want a more productive team? So this one is huge, especially for founders who are leading lean teams and wanting better output without burning people out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really big idea that not everyone works best at the same time, but in kind of the same way, when you actually align the work more closely to how people function and also to how your customers function. And you've got to look at it kind of from the perspective of timing, quieter conditions, flexibility, and also when of your customer base active. You're often optimizing your hours. You're also reducing mistakes. So this is a risk mitigation. You're also reducing fatigue and improving a lot of the quality of the output that you're actually working with. And it shows up from an employee point of view with retention, productivity, and what I love to call success metrics. So these are the metrics that matter. The other thing as well that you get as an efficiency dividend is you often get less sick leave and less unexpected leave, because people are managing their time to their chronotype a lot better. And it works both ways also with work. So think of it like a coffee shop. If your majority of your business is, that 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. rush, you're not going to want to put people in there who are very, very late starters or night owls like me. That's just never going to work. But it's also aligning the right people to it. On the other hand, is it also opens up opportunities for later in the day. So these late starters or early starters might have insights that you do not have, and cater for customers that you do not know that you might have within your kind of service model. So it's a broad-based thing that's really seems niche, but it affects everyone.
So how would I know this is not the question, but how does someone identify what their team's chronotype is?
Well, the best way to look at it is look at what people are requesting for shift-wise, So if you're running on a shift, also look at like what your operating model is from a business point of view. It might reveal what they want. Also look at the customers, and this is one of those things, is look where your customers are spending through the day. This will give you an idea of when there's a lot more activity and when there's not activity, because it could be something like the people-loving people might be a lot more productive in the morning and you see a drop-off of productivity in the afternoon. But that could be because you've actually got, and this is where working hypothesis works really well, and actually going out and testing it and doing service design and understanding what that journey is. But that end of day thing may be busier, but they're organizing it to prepare for the next day. So that would actually appeal for someone who's a later starter and someone's kind of that little organizational mindset. And it's really aligning what they're doing to what needs to be done. So it's really about understanding behaviors of staff, actually talking to them, and also looking at the service model that you're providing. So putting in those touch points and running it through the entire how your customer looks. Best example I can think of it is looking at media. So I came from the old world with papers, and they just love that. But the reality is that in about 2007, 2008, kind of switched to 3 screens model. People were consuming different in the day, and what they found out is that you had that 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock all on mobile and all on kind of those smaller screens, because they're on the train or in transit. They also saw another boost from 9 o'clock. Someone would get into the office, turn on the computer and switch on the news. They also saw another one before lunch, after lunch, and about that 3 o'clock bump. They also saw that like you got a lot more of a bump around that 6 o'clock when the big screen was on. And it's also how, if you look at the MX model, remember those papers that used to be all over everywhere? Their prime was from like 4 o'clock till about 5:36. And it was just to get those rush, and it was fixing in those behavioral models. It's like, when you think about it, the news that they were getting was all the same. The delivery model was very different, and that's understanding that service design journey, which is really, really important to a business.
Yeah, so true. And I suppose that's where business owners need to stop confusing visibility with productivity.
Exactly. And like sometimes it's sitting behind a desk is not the same thing as doing the most productive or doing the best work, which I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah, so true. So let's move on. I think, oh my goodness. So we've got 2 more questions.
Oh, very nice.
So,
yes.
I own a cafe. How can I tell whether the customer behavior is being influenced by things that we haven't accounted for? So this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because you can think that customer choice is rational, but a lot of it is actually emotional, sensory, and habitual.
Exactly. And really the way that I look at it, look for the patterns. Like the patterns usually cluster behaviors. Look what they're asking for and what they don't ask for. Look at the pause, look what they avoid, what they upgrade. There are some things that are deliberately there for like positioning perspective. So menus that have their really expensive steak on it, they go, who the hell buys $150 steak? No one, but we've just positioned you to look at everything else and think, wow, the seafood pasta for $50 is now a bargain. So there's also that aspect to it. So even something as simple like a cafe, sensory preferences and profiles can change. Also, those behavioral things can change massively. So look at it more from the point of the flavor of the experience wasn't there, or there's little bits and pieces. It's not random. It's usually behavior. Think of it as avoidant or attractive behavior. So there's things that they'll avoid, things that are just going to pull them to them like a magnet.
Yeah, totally. And that's very dependent on who the person is, time of the day, and all of those other factors as well. Am I a person who, packs my lunch and earns X amount of dollars, but I'm saving for a house, or am I a student and I've only got a little bit of time and a tiny bit of money? Like there's just so so many areas to understand, and sometimes the gap isn't in the product, it's around the product with those different drivers. So yeah, really, the little barriers matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so the next question, which I believe is our last question, is what if I'm a service-based business and not a shopfront? How is all of this going to apply to me?
Ooh, that's a good one. For service-based businesses, it usually shows up as onboarding, proposals, emails, bookings, and kind of following it through. So seeing where those drop-off points are, seeing where the bounce rate is. If the process is unclear or there's too many steps, you'll see a lot of drop-off. If it's too hard around or too many assumptions of what you're doing, you'll see confusion. So you'll see it stop, not so much drop off, but stop, because it's creating cognitive barriers. And the big problem is that when you're actually adding that friction, there are reasons why you would or wouldn't want to put the friction in, but often if you put too many friction points in, it lowers trusts. Those trust factors. It also increases the propensity for making a decision, and the end result, you will see it as lower conversion. So you won't see people actually convert, and that's basically what's going to hurt. A service-based business is putting up those little barriers. So you'll see it in the bottom line.
Yeah, which is exactly why I suppose some businesses are amazing with what they do, but still it feels harder to buy from them than it should.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly that.
And so last question. How do loyalty programs and repeat business fit into this conversation?
Ooh, this is a really big question, because I could do a couple of videos on it. I've worked with a couple of loyalty people. I know one who is freaking amazing at it. Not all motivation works the same way. So in loyalty is usually used as one word. It's not. There's a whole heap of different loyalties. I go to Coles because it's close, not because I absolutely love Coles. I go to Aldi because, hell, I like those Wednesday special buys. I don't know what I'm getting. It's like a casino. Yeah, but it's customer driven by the rewards, and the rewards that you're talking about are not necessarily one motivation or getting something out of it. There's things for you want to have a look at Apple. Apple does loyalty better than everyone. Why would an idiot camp out overnight to get an iPhone? Like I can get the same iPhone a week later, not a problem. It's basically, when you think about loyalty, it's driving those behaviors. And I could do an absolutely massive video on this, because you're talking about attitudinal, cognitive behavior, price-based sensitivity behavior. You can also talk about those things where they're just kind of cultural behavior. Why would you shop at this shop, or why would you buy this item, or because that's kind of what you do.
Yeah. So essentially, even the loyalty design really needs well thought out strategy.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely part of service design and behavioral design, because loyalty needs to be really put into that. And that's, if you look at it from a customer snapshot, it's understanding what's driving the behavior to use your thing. That's what's driving the loyalty is an outcome. It's not something that you create.
Okay, so let's finish with one takeaway question. And that is, what's the one mindset shift that you would want business owners to leave with after this conversation, in terms of really considering where they're potentially leaving money on the table when it comes to being considerate of all the neurotypes?
Ooh, I'd say stop seeing accessibility, flexibility, and kind of that design strategy. So UX in the purest point of view as extra effort, extra expense, or kind of a nice to have. That is your core business. It in addressing the outliers, you're making your system a lot better and a lot easier for people to actually access and drive through your door. And that's what you want as a business owner. It's not just about making things designed well, it's actually making a better business. It's part of your strategy.
And a better business, who doesn't want a better business at the end of the day? It improves trust, retention, referrals, and ROI.
Oh no, exactly. It's that's exactly it. It's basically a better business generally has a higher value to a customer, and you've got that retention. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. So hopefully this has been, I mean, we've had a pretty extensive deep dive into all those questions today. Thank you, Seamus. Um, so yeah, like hopefully this gives everyone a different lens on the customer experience um, space in their business, and just how your brand looks, not just how your brand looks, but how it might feel as different neurotypes move through the journey, whatever that is for you and for them, depending on whether you're a service or you're a product. Um, and if this conversation has made you realize that there may be hidden friction inside your journey, this is your invitation to get in touch with us, because often the fixes are more practical and profitable than people think.
Yeah, you're right. And it's really the smallest things to a business usually makes the biggest difference to uplift. So think about switching that 1% can turn into a massive difference to your brand and business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you here on the next live. Um, Wishing everybody a happy Easter, and enjoy the school holiday. We may actually take it forward for our next schedule live, or we might make it a fun one. School holidays, and everyone's going to need to laugh and be cheered up. So let's reconvene on that one. But as always, Seamus, thank you so much for coming on and answering all of those questions. And yeah, really appreciate your time and everybody else's time who has jumped onto the live to check out what we're talking about, as well as all of those participants who sent in their questions. So feel free to reach out to us. We're always on call if you need to have a discovery or a workshop. Hit us up on LinkedIn or Facebook. We're here for you. So that's the end for today. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Seamus, and speak to you soon.